Ding, 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 ding. Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday. It is September 8th, and this is the Goffstown Planning Board. This is our first regularly noticed meeting of the month. Before we would start our noticed business tonight, I'm going to ask everybody here to please identify themselves. Jonathan, can we start with you, please?
I'm Jonathan Ork, the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
David Pierce, the Selectman's representative to the board.
I'm Gala Breck, Recording Secretary.
Barbara Griffin.
Philip Devanza.
Tim Redmond.
Jim Raymond.
Thank you, everyone. We do have a quorum, so we will begin with our first item on the agenda, which is the usual action item, which is action on the minutes of our previous meeting. That would be August 11th. The board members who got those in your packets. Do I have a motion?
The only correction was in Jeff Cavan's name. Sometimes it's Kevin and sometimes it's Cavan, so
Okay.
I don't think he'll take offense, but
Motion to approve with the correction.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries unanimously. The next item on, there is a action item regarding an existing home on 83 Surratt Road. Is there anybody here in the audience for that? I'm gonna, oh, there, okay.
I'm the attorney for the Nemesis on the property.
Okay, since you are on the beginning of the meeting, why don't you come on forward? Thank you. Jonathan, you want to tell us what this is?
Yes, basically, the Mitches, they have worked on their property, and they're on a Class 6 road, and they're basically looking for comments from the planning board to submit to the Board of Selectmen. And they have completed the waiver of municipal liability. That has been taken care of properly. And at this point, in order for the building permit to be accepted, we need comments from the planning board to carry on to the Board of Selectmen for their ultimate determination.
And that's because in order to issue a building permit for a Class 6 road, the Board of Selectmen approval is necessary. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, and we had in our packet the application that was received on August 8th that had been filled out by the owners of the property in regards to the Surratt Road application. This is not a new structure. This is a request to build, and wasn't quite sure to me, but it looked like putting on a second floor. Is
Yes, yes, and it is a after-the-fact permit. The work has been done, or almost completed. I'm not sure if it's been 100% completed.
The shell has been completed. The internal parts of it have not. And as a matter of fact,
All right, yeah, okay. So is there anything else going on in Town Hall in regards to this, or not?
Nope, we've coordinated with the town administrator and the building department, and everything's ready to go. Just need the comments and the suggestions from the planning board to the Board of Selectmen, and they'll make the ultimate determination. And at this point, this is all that they need to move forward at this point.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I have asked the applicant to come forward. If I understand we have an individual on behalf of the applicant, so if you could identify yourself for the record.
my name is James Lombardi. I'm the attorney for the Memiches.
Okay. And they've authorized you to speak here tonight on their behalf?
They have.
All right, because it is their name on the building permit. So if you could tell us what's going on, please. To the extent we didn't already just hear it.
Right. This is an application for a building permit to add an addition onto the home that is located at 83 Surratt Road. The Memiches began some building back in, it was almost 2 years ago now, September of 2014. And they were notified by Mr. Tessier that they needed a building permit to do these things. They were under the impression that, given that they had obtained a variance for this second addition, that they were free to move forward, and there was some misunderstanding there. This was before I was involved. At some point, the town decided that they needed to stop building there altogether, and that's when the Memiches hired me. So they issued a cease and desist order, a land use citation was issued as well. And I came on board at that point in time and advised them, and have since been advising them on this matter. All construction stopped at that time, with the exception of just putting up some protective materials on the outside of the buildings to keep it from being, on the outside of the addition, excuse me, to keep it from being affected by the weather. It turned out that in order to receive a building permit, they needed to step back and address the septic issues that apparently were never addressed when this property was initially put up to become a condominium back in 2004 and 2005. And this was before my clients owned the property. And so we ended up, to make a long story not too much longer, the Memiches ended up hiring the land survey engineer who had prepared the plans for the property back in 2004, 2005. His name was Joseph Wickert, also a septic design engineer. And so we went back and reviewed those items, and because of the complexity of the things that had happened then, and because of the amount of time that had passed, it was determined that they needed to go through a certain process in order for the septic to be approved, which they needed in order to get the building permit approved. So for the past year and a half, they've spent time working with Mr. Wickert and with DES, who obviously has oversight on this whole project, to get this system up and running. One of the problems was that their neighbors, who are part of the two-unit condominium, this gets even more complex as we go. It was formed as a condominium way back when, but they never got the official subdivision approval for that because the septic never was ultimately approved, as it turned out. So we ended up trying to get the neighbors involved in this, and they needed to tie into the system before any approval could be given. It took a while to do all of these things, but we eventually succeeded. A couple of months ago, we were able to get the neighbors to sign on. DES has signed off and given their approval, and I believe all the paperwork for that is in the town's hands right now.
That's correct.
So since that time, I've been working with my clients to put together the final paperwork for the building application and to submit it to the town. So it appears that we are on the cusp of having done everything that they need to do in order to make this work.
Thank you for the explanation. That explained the 2014 to 2016 lapse that I didn't quite get when you started this. Questions from the board? Jim?
That's a question or a comment, but in the past where we haven't taken a board position on building on Class 6 roads unless there's some planning issue, one of which is expansion of, unusual expansion, I'd say. This doesn't appear to be that. But we haven't felt compelled to say, yes, it's a good thing to do, because we're just looking at one little sliver. So it's, we can say no comment, and that seems to be accepted as exactly that and not a negative pregnant in that sentence. They should read something into it. I'm hesitant to go a whole lot beyond that from a planning perspective without knowing what's going on Surratt Road other than what we already know. Because we do have concerns about construction of some areas.
Other questions or comments from the board? Tim?
So when a property becomes a condominium and it's divided, who's the authority that permits that at the town level?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Raymond on that one.
Well, it's defined. Jonathan, we defer to you, or do you want me to sort of?
If you'd like to answer
Well,
that.
it's defined in it's defined as subdivision, both in the statute and our regs, so.
So does that mean in order to become a condominium, they needed to come before the planning board and apply for
it sounds
something?
Sounds like they did.
They did, yes. They have condominium documents that have been recorded as well.
Granted by this board?
I believe it was. I'd have to verify that, but I do remember seeing the condo documents in the that were recorded.
If the applicant has any knowledge of this, if they...
I don't have those records with me. I do know that they were recorded
Okay.
way back when. I guess the question was whether or not they were official, given the outstanding issues dealing with the septic system.
The declaration of Surratt Road condominium, and this is the copy of the recording. It's book 7377, page 1919. And it looks like the full condo documents.
This question's to the board.
My question, John, is it in our minute somewhere that the Goffstown Planning Board approved the change of use from a single-family to a condo situation at that? And I'd like that answer before anybody considers this.
Okay.
I'm still good with the no comment, other than I'd like to know what's going on with the condo docs.
I can dig through while you all discuss this.
Okay,
further.
Eddie, well,
We can defer our comment and
Jim,
Well, we can do a couple things. One is we can vote to submit no comment, but subject to verification that subdivision approval was actually granted, and if it wasn't, come back to it later in the meeting. I don't think we need Attorney Lombardi to state it.
My understanding, I don't mean to interrupt, was that approval was given subject to the septic issue and the ultimate subdivision coming to fruition. So there are approvals in there, and I apologize, I don't have those at my disposal at this point in time. But that's my understanding as well. This was the one thing that just remained outstanding, and that was the subdivision approval, but that was given subject to DES approval of the septic issues.
so has there ever been a subdivision plan signed at Kyle?
My understanding is that, yes. I mean,
My
this was all put together.
But if it was subject to the septic design, I wouldn't have had it the board chair wouldn't have had it for signature, I don't believe.
Or it's signed and then sometimes we do that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm going to be embarrassed if
All right,
I signed it
Jonathan.
back when I was chair.
Okay.
You probably did.
Phil,
Yeah, the other thing too is, I've always requested whenever we get these requests that come to us, I'd like to see the property card from assessing. Because we're having an expansion on a Class 6 road, and I'd like to see what expansion we're doing besides what's written in front of us. Sometimes you're talking about a family room and storage. What kind of storage are we talking about? Is that an extra room?
The plans that were submitted with the building permit show all those things. Anything, whatever was required of the building permit application was included
we just
with
didn't.
that.
We just didn't get a copy of it, thank you,
Right.
counsel, we just didn't. Jonathan, do you have, Jonathan, we can deal with it subject to verification that it actually dealt with. Do you have a copy, does somebody have a copy of the actual application with
I
what
do.
was attached to it to pass around for board members to take a look at? Thank you.
Is this application for a building permit?
Right, that's the actual. Are your clients living there now?
Yes, the house has been a residence with a certificate of occupancy for at least 10 years. It was built before that. They are just looking to put an addition on the second floor.
Okay.
I do have a copy of a portion of the subdivision plan. I haven't found the full one yet. It might be in the Mylars that we'd have to double check. It does say approval status with NHDES approval for that. But I don't have a copy of the full that I've seen yet.
Question.
Yes.
Is this the addition? What's dark up here, second floor?
I believe, yes, it is.
So this addition is the entire footprint?
It's on the same footprint.
Yeah.
But it covers the entire, it's not one section?
That's correct.
So it's basically putting a second floor on?
That's right.
Is it unreasonable to say we're doubling the square footage?
I don't believe so, no.
What's the increase in square footage, what's it going, what was it before the addition, and what is it after the addition? That's why I like to see a property assessing part, so I know what we're starting with.
I'm going to make a motion that we submit no comment with any basis to do for or against, which is just to be simply taken as no comment, but subject to John's confirmation that there was a signed subdivision plan for the condo, which I might assume there is, but determine that.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second Jim's motion.
I guess I understand more of the Phil's argument, I'll just say, to be that for the Board of Selectmen, not the Planning Board. I think our issue as a planning board is very different, because that's why it goes to the Board of Selectmen, is to make a determination as to whether it's an expansion of use, and it's appropriate, because they're the ones who ultimately make a decision on road upgrades and services. So I have to tell you, I'm not a thrill of condominiums, especially small condominiums. I think they can be ripe for problems. I think this is an example of what might have happened, but it does seem that this is on the same footprint, and I think the Board of Selectmen can address it. Jonathan?
I did find a subdivision site and floor plan for Surratt Road condominium, and it says it was dated 12/2/04. This plan is approved in accordance with the Town of Goffstown Plan Development Regulations, but I cannot read the signature.
Looks like Tim's signature.
Yeah,
Tim-
you could actually read
All I
mine.
know is it's not mine, so there you go.
Could have been mine.
Somebody, okay, I'm going to remove the condition then.
Looks like Richard
Janice.
Georgianis.
Is that, oh, I'm thinking it's an M, and I couldn't do it. Okay.
So, yeah, when Dick was chair.
Yeah, so it's back from when Dick was chair. So Jim has changed his motion to be simply a no comment. Tim, does your second still stand?
It does.
Are there, Phil?
Yeah, I have a major concern with this. Concern that I have, and I don't know how to deal with it, but I'll just bring it up as my concern, okay? You have a major expansion, okay, from what I see on here. You basically, and I have nothing in here to say factually that I'm incorrect, okay? By adding a second story following the footprint, you've doubled the square footage of the building. You're on a Class 6 road. You had no septic system approval. You've gone and you've built a structure, you've framed it all in, you've gone to DES, you've gotten your approvals, now you come to the planning board, and then you go to the Board of Selectmen to get the approval on a Class 6 road. Okay? That's a bad precedent, because you're telling everybody in Class 6 road, you know what? The hell with the building permit, the hell with going to Board of Selectmen, just do it, and then you go there and you ask for forgiveness, and what are they gonna do? They're gonna say, no, you've already done it. That's why I have a problem with it.
May I address that?
Certainly, Counsel.
First of all, to get to your first point earlier, you had asked what the square footage was, and I just did a quick calculation. It looks like the current first floor is about 1,160 square feet, which would mean that with the addition, it'd be about 2,300 square feet. As far as the issues are concerned, again, I think I addressed the question as to why they had moved forward. They were on the understanding with the variance that they obtained, and the wording in the variance was that so long as they don't add any bedrooms, they're free to do that. And they understood, unfortunately they were incorrect, that they could move forward with that. And again, we've been working closely with the departments and with DES to make sure this is correct. As far as septic is concerned, they had no idea that that was a problem. And that only came to light after we did some research on the records to make sure that we were going down the right road, to make sure we could get the appropriate permits. We found that out afterwards. They were using the septic system that was in there, and part of the grand design, if you will. But it turned out that it wasn't the approved system. They had never had any problems so far as they knew with it, and neither did their neighbors. The neighbors, as a matter of fact, were using a septic system that was under their driveway. They've since disconnected from that and tied into the system that was, or the tank, that was built specifically for the condominium. And again, the plans do not call for there to be any extra bedrooms. They're not increasing the occupancy of the building. They're just increasing the living area. It is, I think, the plans call for it to be a family room with a couple of storage areas in the wings. And so they're not increasing the occupancy by that. So to the extent that they may have made a mistake, they would readily admit that. However, they're not burdening the system or the street or the town any further with what they are doing. And they have done what I've advised them to do and what the town has asked them to do and what DES has asked them to do at considerable expense since they did that. Would they have done it this way? Again, I would advise them not to, and I'm sure that they would not. So I think that they have paid the price as far as doing that, and they've been without the use of this addition for a couple of years now. So they're trying to rectify what the problem was, and a lot of the problem was not their fault.
Questions or comments from the boards? We have a motion on the floor to go to the Board of Selectmen with no comment. Any other comments or questions from the board before I ask for a vote? I will say I think Phil's got a very valid concern, because this type of coming around is a problem. But I also think that signing plans subject to those kind of contingencies are probably not a good idea. All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed? 3, 2, 1, the motion carries. So this will go to the Board of Selectmen, no comment, which is consistent with how we've dealt with these things in the past.
Thank you. And that's going to their meeting, is that going to be heard, do you know, on Monday?
Yes, that is the plan.
Is Monday when their meeting is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing on the CIP matrix. For those of you who are here for applications, we're going to hear a presentation on the matrix. We have some information in front of us on this in regards to work that has been done over the summer. And Tim Redmond was the chairman of this committee, and I want to thank him before we even start for his work on this. He has done this multiple times for us, and we truly are thankful for him.
Do we have something else on the agenda?
We have regular business, but the next noticed item is the CIP presentation.
Okay, I just,
Okay, Tim.
Thank you, Barbara. I have a written report which I will read into the record. I will try to read it as quickly as I can. If anybody has any questions, we can go back to them after.
We have copies of it.
Do you have copies of it? I provided you with a copy.
I've asked, Tim asked me, so members of the public know, Tim asked me whether to read it. I think he can read it. I don't know that it needs to be word for word, but he can certainly go through it. And one of the reasons I asked him to do so, if you're watching this, what this essentially does is it gives you an overview and it goes through the matrix. And quite honestly, if you don't have the information in front of you that we have, it's really hard to follow. So, Tim, again, thank you.
Okay. So this is my presentation of the CIP matrix to the planning board, presented by myself. I was the chairman this past year. This report is prepared for September 8th, 2016 public hearing at the planning board meeting. Just a very brief introduction. The Goffstown Capital Improvement Committee began meeting on May 19th, 2016, to prepare the 2017 through 2022 capital improvement plan for the town of Goffstown. The members of the 2016 committee are myself, chairman and planning board member, Earl Carroll, who is with us this evening in the audience. He served as our vice chair and community at large member for longer than I have been on it, and I've been on it too long. Peter Georgianis was our Board of Selectmen's representative. Michael Smith, he was the Budget Committee representative. He is also in the audience with us this evening. Christy Curtis was our School Board representative. Ray Labor, a Community at Large representative, and Gail Lebrecht, Community at Large representatives. Ray is in the audience, thankfully, and Gail is our recording secretary. So, Planning Board alternates were Barbara Griffin and James Raymond.
Who didn't have to attend any meetings.
Well, I'm going to
It's an easy
I'd like to
job.
thank Barbara for covering for one meeting that I could not be there, and I also want to thank Jim for making himself available, even though he did not have to show up. Jonathan O'Rourke attended all the meetings as the Town of Goffstown's planning coordinator. At this time, I'd like to sincerely thank all members who volunteered and/or attended meetings for their time and effort serving the Town of Goffstown. 5 meetings were conducted ending July 7th, 2016. I would wish to also thank the department heads and other members of the community who made their presentations. The capital improvement program is authorized under state statute and guided by certain sections of state law. The role of CIP committee is an advisory one directed by the Capital Improvements Program Committee Handbook that was most recently revised and adopted on January 22nd of 2009. The committee accepts requests from the department heads, town utility commissions, water precincts, and the school board. All requests are submitted on official capital project worksheets and submission forms that have information about the projects, funding sources, and justifications. The requests are evaluated by the committee to ensure master plan priorities are considered and health, safety, and welfare needs of the town of Goffstown residents and businesses are considered and addressed. After considering the request, the committee attempts to prioritize the proposed improvements by evenly spreading associated costs over the next 6 years in an effort to prevent large tax fluctuations. All presenters identify offsetting revenues that can be used or applied to reduced cost amounts. I won't read last year's numbers because they're in last year's report. So the committee reviewed and carefully studied and discussed vehicle and capital project requests from the department heads, citizen committees, and the school boards listed below. From the police department, Chief Robert Brown III presented requests for 3 new police SUV patrol vehicles, which the police department generally requests 3 vehicles annually based on their use and mileage and the amount of time they put on them. The committee always sees that these are a good investment in the town, and they are also very important for the police department to be able to respond to people in town when they need them. A new replacement generator for the communications at the Mount Uncanunic Tower site, and for a parking lot expansion at the police station. The DPW will assist with the engineering and planning of the parking lot project. All police requests were left in the matrix. The fire department, Chief Richard O'Brien presented requests for 1 new replacement rescue fireboat and trailer, a new fire engine to replace Engine 1 and Squad 1, and a capital reserve request for future apparatuses. The engine has money in the capital reserve savings, and should the residents continue to fund that capital reserve savings, the 3-year cycle on these engines to take 2 engines out of service and replace it with 1 engine, which the chief has been trying to do in an attempt to reduce the fleet and get newer equipment into the fire station. Additionally, the chief made requests for 4 replacement thermal imaging cameras and 1 replacement cardiac monitor defibrillator. All the fire department requests were left in the matrix. Public Works. DPW Director Adam Jacobs presented requests for 2 new replacement 6-wheel plow trucks and 1 new replacement 1-ton plow truck, and 1 new replacement skid steer bobcat machine. In addition, the director made requests for the annual road plan, Uncanunic dam repairs, and design fund requests for 2 bridge decks and 1 bridge replacement. All the requests from the Public Works were left in the matrix. Cemetery trustees, the DPW Director Adam Jacobs presented on behalf of the trustees. A request to continue the phased work at the West Lawn Cemetery was presented. This was left in the matrix. Parks and Recreation, Director Rick Wilhelmi presented a request for 1 new field tractor, work at the Barnard Perry Sports Complex, and the Roy Park Revitalization Phase 2. Regarding the field tractor, the town has been borrowing the tractor from the school department for the last 10 years or more, and it was the director's feeling that it's time to stop borrowing the school's tractor and the town should have their own field tractor. All the Parks and Rec requests were left in the matrix. On the administration, Town Administrator Sue DeRusso made a request for the Town Hall fire alarm building security system and new exterior door entrance and rear door replacements, as well as funds for the master plan revision documents project, which the planning board requested. Requests were left in the matrix. As far as the library goes, Diane Hathaway, Library Director, and Library Trustees Mike Lawler and Carl Foley made a request for architectural services and engineering services for the library expansion project. They have funds available through their library, can you help me, Earl?
Library Board of Trustees funds.
Okay, which they are going to use in full?
They're going to use just about all of what they've got to offset the engineering costs.
Okay. So there is a small amount of tax money involved in that, but for the most part, they are supplying the funds.
Yeah, it'll cover, what they've got will cover about half of the engineering costs, maybe a little bit less.
Thank you, Earl. Sewer Commission, Mike Yurgo presented a request from the Sewer Commission for the planned sewer rehabilitation project and associated costs to the committee. As an enterprise fund, the presentation is customary, as all sewer projects are funded by the users, not general taxation funds. The Village Water and Grassmere Water Precincts, Planning and Economic Development, no presentations. I'm incorrect by saying both are enterprise fund operations. The Village Water Precinct and the Grassmere Water Precinct are enterprise funds. Economic Development would be tax funded, however, there were no requests. No requests were made by GTV, EDC, the Concom, or HDC. EDC is Economic Development Commission, and HDC is the Historic District Commission. From the School Department, Brian Balke, the school superintendent, presented requests for the Maple Avenue Elementary School, Mountain View Middle School, and Goffstown High School. District-wide, a request for Phase 2 building performance upgrades was presented. All requests were left in the matrix. So concluding, on the town side, the CIP committee began and ended with requests totaling $4,121,054. On the school side, the committee began and ended with requests totaling $990,000. We felt, as a committee, that the requests were properly represented as health and safety or meeting the requirements to be left in as required by our statute. So we also felt that the amounts were much less than they've asked for in the past. They still have to go to the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen, where they will be reviewed and probably worked on at that point. So at this point, I respectfully submit this report, and we, as a committee, voted unanimously to present this matrix to the Planning Board. There were no dissenters. I would ask if Earl Carroll has anything to say, Mike Smith or Ray Labor as committee members who are here at the meeting tonight.
Earl, come on up.
I'm Earl Carroll. I've been a community-at-large representative, I think, since 1999, and vice chair for most of that time. When the planning board reviews the matrix, you'll note in the comments all the way at the right-hand side of the matrix that there are several projects, a couple of school projects and a couple of town projects, which are there subject to grant funding. And on these, the note says in several instances, no grant, no project. So if the grant money doesn't come through, it's going to come off the matrix, at least for the time being. The other item that we might want to mention is that the committee is looking to meet with the planning board somewhere in the near term for a couple of reasons. One is we would like the CIP handbook to be revised so that the priorities, urgent, necessary, desirable, deferrable, are better defined. Right now, the definitions are at best sketchy. We'd also like some input from the planning board with respect to how we treat offsetting revenues and how we treat recurring bond payments. For example, you'll see the library request for the library expansion has a proposed bond of $2.3 million
Next year.
for next year. If that bond passes, of course, there's going to be recurring bond payments in the out years, whether it's a 10-year bond, a 15-year bond, a 20-year bond. In the past, those numbers have been carried over on the CIP matrix from year to year. We question whether that is actually the correct process to use, because once the bond is issued, there's nothing we can do about those bond payments. They are what they are. And therefore, they probably ought to be in the operating budget rather than in the capital improvement budget. So we'd like the planning board to think about that as well.
We're not asking for any answers this evening. We're just setting the table for a workshop between the
Okay.
CIP committee and the planning board. The only reason we, in our discussion in regards to bond payments, it keeps it fresh in the CIP mind as to what is out there in case they come in to ask for something else. Because if the recurring bond payments don't show up on the matrix and another big project comes forward, well, we still have this debt. Maybe we need to wait till this debt is settled before we take on more debt. So that was part of our discussion, and we would like the board to weigh in on it so that we can revise the handbook.
Okay.
There's also the business of offsetting revenues, because most people who made presentations listed offsetting revenues that they don't have. The only real offsetting revenues that some of us felt were justified are cash payments that are available as an actual offsetting revenue.
This would be either impact fees or funds that are held by the trustees of the town trust funds.
Or a capital reserve
But
fund
that-
like for the apparatus.
And that's, the trustees monitor those as well.
We also have the ambulance fund, which is a cash fund. So if they're asking for $200,000 for an ambulance and they have $180,000 in cash, we know what the tax impact would be, the difference. But when we're going to go for a grant to cover this or cover that, well, we don't know that it's actually going to happen. Or we're going to request a bond. Well, as a rule, bond payments are a town-wide vote anyway, so we would just pass that along and let the taxpayers make that decision.
Okay.
So we as a committee,
Things to discuss.
yeah, we as a committee will make our finite list and present it to the planning board to consider, and then maybe give it 30 days before we meet so the board members would have time to think about the requests.
Are
And
you going to meet again?
we will schedule a meeting.
We have no meetings scheduled, however, given the discussion and assuming we get some input from the planning board, I think the plan is to get the committee together sometime within the next month, at least for a brief meeting, so that we can come up with a coherent
Request.
request for the planning board, so that this thing is not all over the place.
But it would be a formal revision of the handbook is what we're looking for.
Okay.
And I just want to echo one thing that Tim said. This year was, the presentations from the department heads were even better than they were last year, and last year was a marked improvement over what we had seen in prior years. So I do want to go on record as thanking the various department heads and commission chairs for their presentation. They really did a very, very good job this year, and it made our job a whole lot easier.
Thank you.
So I'll offer the chair to Mike. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to add? How about you, Ray?
Yeah, I have a question.
You guys have done a nice job summarizing our findings. I want to echo Earl's comment, though. The presentations by the department heads appear to be very thoughtful this year. And we had some quality data to work with. Eliminated a lot of questions and concerns that the
Come on up front,
committee
Ray.
had in previous years. I'm
Okay.
finishing up now, Tim. But I think the quality, again, is just outstanding, and we're hoping that it continues in future years.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions? Phil?
Yeah, Tim, on the report you mentioned,
Vehicles he's looking at.
yeah, vehicles, 3 new police SUV patrol vehicles, and when I look on the matrix, there's 2 Crown Vics being replaced and 1 Expedition. Are
That's
we looking at 3 SUVs?
No, we're looking, Patrol 17 is to replace Line 9, Line 13, and Line 14.
Bill, what Chief Brown wants to do is try and move some of the Crown Vics into SUVs.
Right.
I think what's happening is that the police are required to carry more and more
Equipment.
equipment, One of the reasons they got out of the Ford Tauruses, which is now, because, first of all, Ford no longer makes
The Crown Vic.
Crown Vic Police
Right.
Interceptor. So they were moving toward Tauruses. Unfortunately, the cabin space in the Taurus, and Chief Brown was here, and I had the opportunity to personally sit in the driver's seat of one of these Tauruses, and I'm not loaded down with body armor and weapons and
Right.
anything else, and it was a tight fit. And I'm not saying I'm not, a small person, but I don't think I'm overly large either. So I think given those factors, he wants to move from Crown Vics or a similar vehicle into the SUV. We questioned him about cost differential, and we questioned him about gas mileage. And he responded that both of those were minimal. The miles per gallon differential was about 1, and the cost differential, he said, once the vehicles are outfitted, is gonna be maybe $1,000 per vehicle.
Phil, to answer your question, the chief is requesting a replacement for a 2011 Crown Vic, a 2008 Crown Vic, and a 2009 Crown Vic. There are no SUVs coming out of the fleet.
I think that the
Line
question
10.
was more of a, when.
No,
we
line,
used to Tim, there's no question, it's just when you look at the matrix, he was just clarifying that, I think, Tim, if I can state this, is that he's replacing them with SUVs, and if you just look at the matrix, you don't see SUV.
Right.
In the description of the vehicle, you just see the vehicle being replaced. So he was just clarifying that.
well, I'm still confused by your question, Phil. What are you talking about? We're not, the 2008 Ford Expedition was in the 2016 adopted budget.
We're going to move on, Tim. The question was just that under the description in 9, for example, it says Crown Victoria. That is the vehicle being replaced.
That's correct.
It just doesn't say SUV/2 SUV. That's all. So he was just clarifying that the word saying SUV was in fact what was equating to the 39,451 in the proposed CIP. That's all.
Okay, well, he did ask for 3 new SUVs, and there are 3 spots in the 17 proposed budget, so I made an assumption that people would assume that that's what those were, 3 SUVs.
Okay.
Not in the memo.
Okay.
Just another subject very briefly. The school board reduced a lot of their requests in the last 2 years because of the fact that they're allowed to keep a small percent of their surplus. And they have shown that some of this surplus money that they've retained has been used to do carpet replacement, some other projects at the schools that used to be in the matrix. Now they are funding internally and getting them done without coming to the town to request them in the matrix. And we were appreciative of that and complimented them on that for that proper use of that surplus funding.
Any other questions from board members on the presentation? Thank you. In regards to CIP, the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee will be reviewing this. And in regards to it, our typical action on the planning board would be to vote to accept the 2017-2022 capital improvements program matrix
So move.
and present to the Board of Selectmen. Thank you, Phil. Is there a second?
With the clarification Tim just whispered to me, I seconded.
You thought we were getting a town car, like a Lincoln town car, but
That
it's
says
a
town car.
town car.
Never mind. Just move on.
All right, Jim. Next year, when they try to see how big the vehicles are, we'll call you and put you in the vehicle, and you won't fit in any of them, no matter what they are.
Earl, help me.
Because of your height, just to clarify for the record. All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? David is abstaining as our member from the Board of Selectmen. It carries with one abstention. Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Ray,
the
Mike.
compliments.
Thank you. Nice
Earl,
job.
Tim, for
Appreciate
doing
your
this
work.
again. It is,
It's tedious because it's the other Thursday night that we're not here. And it's most of the spring and summer when everyone else is doing something else on Thursday nights.
And so if any member of the public is curious about what we're talking about, is the total amount of money that was approved in regards to it was $4 million.
Jim, when this is presented to the selectmen, do you do the presentation?
Not usually. I haven't in the past, but I would be happy to attend the selectmen's meeting at your request.
Thank you.
You'll have to email
I
me and
will.
let me know when I have to be there.
I will advise you if
Thank you,
necessary.
David.
Robert, just to clarify, we haven't approved an appropriation. This is just a
Correct.
recommendation for capital expenses.
Correct. This is not a budget process in any way, but I just thought it would be helpful for members of the public, having heard all sorts of nice new vehicles and projects and all of that, as to how much money was being proposed, and it was $4 million. So again, thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and thank you to all of the CIP members for doing that work. And Jonathan, I understand then this will go to the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item of business on our agenda tonight is a matter of old business. This is in regards to map 20, lot 16. This is a completeness review, site plan review hearing for a proposal to convert a 1,404 square foot existing garage barn into an auto repair shop. The property currently has a real estate office. This is the Century 21 building at the corner of 114 and 114A, along with a single-family home on the lot, making this a mixed-use property. JEM 443 Mast LLC are the applicant and owners. And this is zoned residential small business office, or RSBO-2. This has been continued by the July 28th meeting. Jonathan, do we have something in regards to the applicant being present tonight?
The applicant messaged me, and they were unable to attend this evening because their mother passed away, and asked that Mr. Shea speak on his behalf, and has permission to speak for Mr. Heichel.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, why don't you just bring us up to date for the record here tonight of what occurred in regards to this up till now, with our last review having been on the 28th of July.
Since our last review on the 28th, at that meeting, we requested the applicant go before the ZBA. Did not receive any correspondence for that until I received some communication that potentially that they would remove the lift. As requested, if you pick up this packet from the desk, has the map from the ZBA, original approval, along with a letter that was sent yesterday as well from a Mr. Ed Hartford. In conjunction to that, your package should have been included letters from various abutters that hopefully you had time to review. Also, I included in this packet the notice of decision from the ZBA, and then the pages from the minutes that reflect the original approval from the ZBA.
Thank you, Jonathan. I asked Jonathan to put that together. I know that we have seen pretty much everything here except the 3 letters. Well, the 3 letters came in our packet, because I know that sometimes keeping track of the paperwork, and we have not been here for a while, so I wanted to make sure everybody had everything that we have been considering. I'm going to give everybody time to sort of...
So, John, do we have a new site plan, or just the one that we did, this from the ZBA?
I have not seen any additional information from the last meeting.
So, my question would be, is there anything new to present tonight?
I have not seen anything new to be presented. The only information that I am aware of is that the applicant was potentially talking about removing the lift and addressing the landscaping issues that we discussed previously.
John?
I have a recollection that we had a number of questions when we continued it to this date, including whether or not this was an appropriate date to come back to, and the applicant wanted to come back. We had questions about the outdoor lift, the number of doors on the garage. There were issues in regards to the building permits. What is the status of the building permits, Jonathan?
I spoke with fire today to also address the questions about drainage on the lift to do with,
Well, an
chemicals and
interior
pests.
too, right? Because
Yeah.
there's an issue with the fire department where we've now
Yes.
dramatically changed the use of this building,
Yep,
correct?
I'll address all that as well, if that's okay.
Okay.
To start with the lift, the fire department, the issues that they had, if that lift was removed and the concrete pad was removed, those issues about drainage and dealing with potentially hazardous materials would be eliminated. The additional comments from the fire, that section. As far as the interior, I spoke with Bill Connor earlier today, and he said that he has not been in there since it has been changed from storage to auto service or repair. I also spoke with Mark earlier today, and he has not been contacted by Mr. Heichel to complete the open permit right now, building permit. So he still needs to contact that.
And is that the open building permit that was not consistent with what was viewed on the exterior of the building when the property, when town personnel visited the property?
That is correct, yes.
And do we have anything in writing from the applicant in regards to removal of the outdoor lift?
I do not have anything in writing.
The Conservation Commissions, and I'm just trying to go through this, that I am now on your packet, page 4. The Conservation Commission stand, these are from before, I think everybody has seen those before, in regards that containment area for the lift outside or inside for hazardous materials. And there's, whether or not there's been areas provided for the cleanup.
Are these, is this a rehash of our old application, or is this a updated version?
The comments on page 4 and 5?
They are updated somewhat. I mean, there hasn't been anything new to review, so
So it's fairly
typically, it's,
consistent with what we got the first time?
yes, that is correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Barbara.
I have, what happened was this would, I have some, I brought my previous material, there was July 14th, and then we came back on July 28th. So if I compare the conservation comments have been, apparently were addressed a little bit further in regards to the actual issues in regards to the use of the property. The Conservation Commission comments as of July 28th, prior to their last meeting, were simply adequate drainage to avoid water across the rail trail. And you see the comments here today. DPW engineering had the same comments at that previous review on the 28th, along with fire department. Jonathan contacted the fire department because of the additional comment in regards to the fact that this application substantially changes the renovation of the garage. And I had also thought that perhaps I had asked Jonathan to contact Mark because if there was a change in the building permit status, I wanted to know from the last time. And then the additional fire department comments, as presented in your packet, are the same from the fire department, and the police department is no comments. I also, have some notes that were made that apparently is part of our discussion as to whether the lift was permitted by zoning. But we had not addressed that, and it was my understanding that there was going to be some further discussion with the ZBA to resolve that. There was also, from the previous meeting, the question of landscaping in regards to the abutter. But I believe that the conditions, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, that we often see from you as part of the report remain substantially the same
That is correct.
as the previous, because you haven't had anything further.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody, any members of the board have any questions or comments before I hear from Ray Shea on this. Michael?
So, motor vehicle repair, service, and towing, including bodywork, is not permitted by special exception or conditional use in RSBO 1 or 2. So, my question would be, does the granting of the zoning variance compel that use by us? Or, does it have to reconcile?
It doesn't have to reconcile, that's why they're the ZBA. We can still, we don't have to approve the use, but we have to consider the use as being a valid use, and then our question becomes one for purposes of planning and any other use of the property in regards to whether it would be consistent with our zoning issues. And Mr. Raymond can correct me if I'm wrong with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jonathan, did you have?
Just one quick comment. I did have a printout from the voicemail from Mr. Heichel, and it does mention that they think that they have addressed the landscaping, and I've agreed to take the lift down in this voicemail. So I do have actual
Okay.
documentation of that.
All right, well, if I don't have anything else from the board, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. Mr. Shea?
Evening, my name is Raymond Shea from Sanford Surveying, and as you know, Mr. Heichel is unavailable to attend tonight. After the last meeting, the two major, at least what I felt, the two major issues outstanding were the lift and the landscaping, and we had submitted a proposed landscape schedule, which we really didn't get into discussing, and the lift. And Mr. Heichel, shortly after the meeting, agreed I'll remove the lift from the property, the exterior lift from the property. So we felt making that decision and having submitted the landscaping, which we could discuss tonight, there really wasn't additional information to present, to submit for tonight. We'd come back tonight and discuss those outstanding issues. The extra overhead door in the barn, and I don't even remember if we discussed this at the meeting. You may have closed it, but it's to get equipment in, parts and materials in. There's no outside dumpster, so we plan on keeping trash and receptacles in there. It's just an easy access. It's intended to be 2 bays to work on. He's restricted to 1 bay. So, and the other building permit issues, I think, are just that, building permit issues. Normally, occasionally you approve site plans where there's no building, so that building permit issues are like a separate being handled with the building department as the building's built. So as far as, the fire department inspecting, the gas wasn't hooked up and things like that, that's, in my opinion, those are all building issues to be taken care of after the plan's approved, site plan's approved, and the CO, before the CO's granted. So I think we're taking the lift out of the equation addresses quite a few of, a pretty big issue. When we looked at the landscaping, and we're asking for a reduction in landscaping. As you know, the landscaping ordinance requirements are based on the size of the lot. This is almost a 4-acre lot. We're developing or is developed approximately 1.25 acres. So we looked at that, and we submitted on the plans that were before you at the last meeting, a proposal for landscaping based on the developed area of the property. We are also proposing, and I think we may have addressed this at the last meeting, along the beginning of the driveway of the abutters on the east, 6 arborvitaes along that area where there's no vegetation between the applicant's site and the abutter's driveway to act as a buffer. And also, as you come in the easterly access or entrance to the site, we're proposing 6 rhododendron at the island as you enter, and then another 6 or 8 up by the side of the new barn, or the reconstructed barn, on the east side of the kind of soften the view up alongside towards the back parking lot. I think we touched on that at the last meeting, but we didn't really expand on the discussion of it. So I think, you know, in our minds, when we left the last meeting, the two big issues were the lift and the landscaping. We've addressed the lift issue, which I think, you know, takes a lot of concerns of both the board and the abutters away. So I guess I'd like to go from there and discuss, you know, open up to the board any of the questions.
Michael?
Are there any changes to the landscaping since
We
the
haven't
last time?
touched the plan since the last meeting. No, we haven't, because we really didn't get into the discussion of the landscaping, so we just, again, we just left it as it was, and we have the same proposal for the reduction.
Michael?
The proposed site plan that was presented to the ZBA indicates that the barn has 2 bays. Can you speak to that?
No, I wasn't part of that application. However, it's clear during the process of the ZBA, it was downgraded to 1 bay. I believe that's the way the approval was granted.
Yes, the notice of decision.
And I think
was 1 day.
Mr. Heichel spoke to that. Again, a lot of discussion took place after the public hearing was closed, so there are a lot of things he wanted to say, but he couldn't quite say. I think that might have been in one of them, addressing the bays.
Tim?
So, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that when you apply, when the applicant applied for a 2-bay garage, and the zoning board of adjustment said, no, a 1-bay garage is all we want, that a single door would have been installed in the property as shown on the building permit application? So I think that, personally, I think that we need to stick to the strict language of the zoning board of adjustment's approval, and that other bay door is going to have to come out and be walled in, so there is a single door as the zoning board of adjustment notice of decision stated. That's just my opinion. I like the landscaping plan. I think you've done a good job with adding some shrubs to clean up those areas that were under discussion. But I certainly would want to see a plan come back with the concrete pad not shown on a plan.
We can make that a condition of approval.
That's
either way.
fine.
Yep,
No,
absolutely.
Condition of approval is, I'm just, this has been such a discussion, I think it needs to be seen by the board, personally.
If I could just follow up on the concrete pad issue, it's my understanding that apparently what we're looking at is an application and a plan with a concrete pad with car lift that on a new plan would say to be removed. I will point out that somewhat consistent with Tim's comments is the ZBA approval that went through showed some minimal parking on the plan, and I have to say that I'm actually not excited about 4 additional spaces on this because I am very concerned about what this might become behind the building that cannot be seen, but the abutters have to deal with. And if that concrete pad is coming out, I would like the 4 extra spaces, or 3, I guess, I don't know, what do you do with 12.1? Come out, and that more of the parking is up against the building and not on the edge. That would be a preference, certainly, for me. Other comments from members of the board on this? Tim?
I also went by the property several times and viewed it in the last couple of weeks, and I do notice that the tenant has a truck with a big trailer that he always parks in the main driveway there in front of the existing residence, and that's going to become a laneway for travel as shown on the plan, so I would assume that those kind of issues would be dealt with.
Yeah, and I think someone had some pictures of the site last time of the back, and that trailer was present, and the question was, you know, what's Mr. Heichel doing with this trailer in the back? Well, after the meeting, he said, well, that's my tenants, you know, so that will be parked out back. So, you know, a lot of, like I said,
The trailer's not the tenant's, that's his web mail. That's his email
I
address.
thought there was a.
Well, the trailer has an enclosed white box
No,
trailer as a
there's
carpenter's.
There's a kind of like a utility trailer.
Oh, a
behind.
utility
Correct.
Okay.
Correct,
All
yeah.
right.
And I think that was brought up last time, you know, who's that, what's it doing there?
Okay.
And it's the tenant, so.
All right. Other-
Okay, I can expand on things if there are any more questions.
Other questions or comments from board members? The public, I'm not seeing any further comments from the board members at this time. I'm going to reopen the public hearing on this matter. It was continued. In doing so, I will note for the record orally, they are in the packet, that we have received some written comments on this application. One is a letter of 8/23 from Alan Brown of Meadow Lane, indicating that he was concerned about a use of property next to residences that he did not feel was appropriate, and that the commercial lift outside was not consistent with the original application. There's a letter of August 19th from Robert and Elizabeth Harris in regards to auto body work being done at this site and stating their opposition. And their impression of the ZBA approval, and I'll have to look as we might take comment, was that the ZBA approval was parking for 6 cars. So, there's that. And then there is also a written comment from Andrew and Mary Philippi of 28 Meadow Lane, stating that he thinks the use should be strictly what's in the variance, that the lift should be removed, the second overhead door removed, and keep to minimal number of parking spaces. He also submitted a picture that the dumpster currently used by the business is outside, and I believe our packet tonight has an email that came in. Did I see an email that came in?
Yes.
Barbara,
Pardon me?
can I say something?
Sure.
As the picture that we have submitted here is for the other business down on Mast Road.
Correct. Right.
So I want to make sure that that's clear, that it's not
Oh.
the discussion that's in discussion tonight.
I just found the other packet, and there's an email from a Mr. Hartford in opposition to the alteration and the scope of the use that's being proposed.
And you got this one, right?
Yes, I already
Okay.
mentioned that. And Ray, before we open it up, can I ask you a question on the parking calculation?
Sure.
Okay. So the 4 spaces are for 1 bay, correct? And so the total of 12 spaces is for the single-family residence of 2 and the real estate office for 6. I just
Correct.
want to clarify that. But the 4 spaces that are being proposed is just for 1 bay. Can you?
Right,
can
if you look at the ZBA plan, it doesn't even address the rest of the parking. So that's
Yeah, it
why.
just has the
that's
spots,
why the
okay.
ZBA plan, as we talked about last time,
Right.
in my experience with plans of this sort, they go to the ZBA for a use, or an exhibit to show, so
Get an idea.
it's not gonna match exactly the site plan when the site plan comes before you. And it doesn't, if you look at it, it doesn't even mention parking for this, just, it's very general, so to be held to the layout on the ZBA plan, I don't feel that's reasonable.
Do you know what the depth of this bay, of this garage is,
No,
Ray?
no, probably the length of the garage, I don't know. I've never been in the garage.
And because I don't see any measurements, and it just seems to me it's quite long for one day. Tim?
Well, what Ray just said kind of rubbed me the wrong way, that the plan that was sent to the ZBA is just a representation. It's not a plan that's going to come to the planning board. It's going to be different. And I find that to be a statement that I would contest, because if the ZBA approved a plan showing something, that's what the applicant represented that they wanted to do on the site. To go into the ZBA with a plan that shows something and then say, well, you know, I'm just going to show something different to the planning board because that's not really what I wanted, but I thought maybe the ZBA would like that, so I'll go ahead and do it. I think that's absurd. I think that if we are going to, as a board, at this time and in the future, consider a ZBA plan for a planning board plan, the plans better match, or I'm not going to vote for them.
And I apologize for maybe misrepresenting the way I was saying it. I meant, or what I think I said at the last meeting, for a change of use, and this was a use variance. In my experience, the physical layout isn't as important as the use, in this particular case, where it's a use in an existing building. So that's kind of what I meant. It's not that totally disregard the plan that went for the variance. I didn't intend that at all. But if you do compare the two, it's a one-way on the on the east side of the building. There's parking in back. There's a one-way out. So in general, the layout's the same. Mr. Heichel has done some dirt work back there, so what we showed to be paved matches some of the dirt he's pushed around. If he hadn't done that, we might have shown the edge of pavement to more reflect what the ZBA plan is, and we can pull back on some of the pavement if it looks like there's too much. We're trying to be a little generous. When you start pushing snow around, there are a couple cars out there to be worked on. It's just the tenant comes in with his utility trailer for his work. Just thought it would be beneficial to the applicant for a little extra,
The amount of parking, the amount of paving that's being proposed is
Plus, you want to be able to get around it. You want to be able to fire truck around it, and when you start, you start pulling in the pavement, it just makes it a
It's
little.
going to look like a giant parking lot.
I agree.
And the fact is, the ZBA plan shows more parking than the site plan does. The ZBA plan shows 21 spaces, and the site plan for the planning board shows actually less spaces.
So
Yeah.
we
The
tried,
layout is different.
I didn't mean to disrespect the ZBA or this
No,
board's
I'm
view
just-
of the plans. But it was, again, it was more the use variance. It wasn't a dimensional variance or something like that, so that's kind of what I was referring to.
All right, now that I open the public hearing, I'm proceeded to not open the public hearing as we continue to have a discussion. Is there anybody else on the board who has a comment or question? I'm seeing none, so I am going to open the public hearing. at
I'll
this
be
point.
back after that.
All right, you can come back after that, Ray. Is there anybody, a member of the public here, would like to make a comment? Come on up, please. And if you could, if everybody, when you come up, if you could state our name for the record, because this does go into our minutes, so we have a record.
Would you like my address as well?
Sure.
Okay, I'm Jason Spencer. I live at 444 Mass Road. I live directly across the street.
Okay.
Let's have some notes real quick.
Take your time.
Absolutely. I was originally approached by Mary about 3 weeks ago. I was having my goddaughter's first birthday. She pulled in, and I was like, she had a list of everybody's name. I had no idea what was going on. Like, how do you know my name, my address? I'm like, what's going on? And she told me about these meetings and what had been going on with the property across the street. I obviously got the letters, I knew, and John had approached me about the situation. And she told me about a lift in the back, and I know that the previous speaker had told us it was going to be removed. But that's why I'm here. a lot of the stuff that was spoken about with him completely changed with this lift, and I again, I understand he mentioned it, but I just want to make it known that we're very, very concerned about it, and he says he's gonna remove it, but when, and what's the situation? Is there any repercussion? I heard he was asking for relief on how many trees he had to put in, you know, and it's like, well, you know, if you need help with the money, don't put in a lift before you're approved. You know, like, I don't see where he should be getting help with that. I don't know, I'm sorry, like, you just can't allow this lift to be here. Again, I'd like to know if we can get a timeline. If the timeline isn't reached, is there fines or penalties? We've been told the parking spots seem to be very up in the air, how many parking spots, who they're for. So who says that there's 4 people living in that apartment and they need 6 cars? Who says they're not for his business and all of a sudden it's overflowing? I don't know what the pavement situation is, but there's already a bread truck back there. Like, I don't know who drives the bread truck. It's been sitting there. You know, his red truck has been there. I haven't seen that move. You know, and that's visible by the road, and so is the bread truck if you drive by, along with the other guy's truck that sits in the front with the big box truck. And now all of a sudden, this property that used to be Century 21, you know, a few nice cars, or not even nice, doesn't matter, a few cars, their stuff, and nothing, has now turned into a bread truck that's visible. So cool, you move in, it's hidden to you, maybe, but who says it's not being seen? You know, it's kind of the scope of what's going on and how to control. You drive by any mechanic shop, every single spot is packed. There's tow trucks. It's not a pretty thing. It's never like good looking. You're like, again, it's going to be out back. Not to Mr. Jones, that's his front yard. You know, like, you walk out, boom, right there, lift, again, supposedly going to be removed. Cars that are already there, like stuff that has leaves on it that are dead. There's no dead leaves right now, not really. That's been there at least a year. You know, who knows if it's his, who knows if it's the other people. Again, we can't control, he can just say, oh, it's that person's, oh, it's not mine. You know, and it's just, like, where does it end? What do we consider a junk car? How long can the car sit there before we can say, hey, that car's been there for 9 months, get that out of here? Now it's a junkyard. You turn the mechanic shop to a junkyard because maybe the engine blew and the guy said he didn't want it. He decides to take it on as a project, but he never gets around to it for 2 years. 6 months, what's the number? And again, now, you guys, that's not your job. That's our job as the neighbors. Now, we have to police him and keep an eye on him to make sure that he's following rules that he's kind of already broken. Decided he was going to put in a different door, decided he was going to put in this lift outside. So whenever we say to him, like, hey, you know, is that car leaving soon? Yeah, sure. And then it's sitting there, and then it starts stacking up. Hey, you going to get rid of some of these cars? Yeah, sure. You've seen the other property, like you said, there's a trash can out in the front, like a big industrial dumpster, cars stacked on top of cars, like, you know, you can't move. How do we control that from happening right there? Who says all of a sudden they're not parked out front? I don't know if they're his. There's 3 tires tucked next to the thing. I can see it from my front step. 3 tires. Now that becomes 9 tires. That becomes 12 tires. Oh, well, I gotta wait for the right recycle guy to come get it, or whoever. And all of a sudden there's 50 tires, and they never come. You know, it's an endless list of questions that are, because you're trying to control something that you can't really control. We can't go in and audit his business. That was a huge part of the lift. Supposedly it was for him. And you say, well, who says that that's your car on there? Who says that that's what it's for? Again, it's going to be removed. When? There was no timeline given, you know, it just says it's going to be removed. You know, we would like to know by this date, or does that pend the approval of all the other stuff? Like, can he continue on until that's removed? You know, I would like to see that removed and then other things continue. You guys are concerned about the other bay door that he installed because it's supposedly for trash. Again, who says he's not pulling another car in there? And now he's working on 2 cars. Right outside the scope of what was zoned, because he applied for 2, if I recall correctly, and got approved for 1. Now he has two doors, there's nothing that stops you from pulling two cars. And are we gonna drive over there and be like, hey, you need to let us in and see what you have in here? Oh, you have two cars? Because then he'll just say, oh, I pulled that one out of the rain. You know, whatever it is. And it's just then all of a sudden, his other place gets shut down, and this is his main place of business, and whatever's down there is now right in the center of the town right there, right at that main intersection. You have what's down the street, right there. Because we can't tell him, or he can't tell us, it'll be all blow-offs of, that's this, and there's no real control. Once it starts, how do we stop it from snowballing into something way larger than what it is? And that's the hugest problem. Again, I really appreciate that he said he's gonna remove the lift. We need to see it. I went to Mr. Jones' house today to tell him I was gonna be present today, and I looked over and I said, I think that's new. There's a big industrial piece next to it. And I said to him, I said, did he put something new there? And he said, it's funny you say something because I think that's new too. And it looks like the controls and the rest of the thing. Maybe he's putting it with it to remove it. I don't know. But all of a sudden, he was like, I was questioning myself on that. And I was like, me too. So now if two people are like, I didn't see that before, is it going forward? Is he just fluffing us to get approval? To allow us to let him do what he wants, and then once it's there, it's done. Other than that, we had some concerns about business hours and bay doors in the summer for noise, especially on the front side. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to make a comment on this application in regards to, hold on, for the record, let me get back to map 20, lot 16, an application of JEM 443 Mast LLC. Anybody else who wants to make a comment? Yeah, come on down. Right, the woman, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mary Philippi. I reside at 28 Meadow Lane, which is in the neighborhood of 443 Mass Road, but also own property at 456 Mass Road, which is directly across the street from Mr. Jones. You step out the front door and look to your left. The 443 property is right within your view. And we do have a family member that's living at that address. I just want to reiterate a little bit about what's been discussed at the last meeting. You summarized a letter we had sent, so I'll just briefly say a very strict variance was given, and I would really like to see nothing be allowed other than what the variance was given for, and none of these add-ons like the lift, the second door, and additional parking spaces. I'm a little confused because I thought I heard at the last meeting that this board really didn't have the authority to deal with the lift, and it was indicated it should go back to ZBA, which it hasn't. But with Mr. Hinkle saying he's gonna remove it, that sounds like it's going in the right direction. I hope it happens real soon. And I do hope the lift and the concrete pad is included together as one object that's being removed. Regarding the parking, I thought I had read in some of the minutes from the ZBA that originally there was 12 spaces needed when the variance was initially asked for with the 2 bays, but there was, and I'm sorry, I don't have them with me, but I seem to remember reading, there was a comment that we'd probably need less because now we only have 1 bay. But the, and I'm not sure, there was reference just now to a planning board, zoning board application that had 21 spaces. That's the first I've heard of that. But anyways, I would like to see, it was sold and approved as a low-key, low-volume, quiet little business overflow from his business further down the road, and we'd like to keep it that way. The people that live in that neighborhood would like to see that. And to clarify a little bit about my picture of the dumpster, that is located at his Uptown Auto, which is on Mass Road. The point of the picture was, it's a fairly small dumpster, and if that's what he's using at that location, which is his bigger business, my thought would be he would need that size or possibly smaller at the 443 Mass Road address, so it doesn't really, to me, justify a second overhead door to roll a dumpster in and out. Again, asking to just approve what the variance was initially given for. Landscaping, I really can't speak much to. It's hard for me to look at that and kind of visualize what extra trees and bushes are going to do to enhance the property and blocking, be it the neighbor's vision or people driving by. I thought in the last meeting there was some sort of reference to a formula of sort that, based on the amount of land you have, I don't know if you want to call it green space, and I thought it was said that he hadn't met that formula, and the engineer had based his calculations on not the total property, but what was being used, and there was a comment, I can't remember who said it, but they said something about that's not how it's being calculated. So again, I'd like it to be strictly, but, you know, the way it should be. And that is all I have on my list. Thank you.
I don't have a lot on my list. I
Just
just,
state your name.
oh, Andrew Philippi. I'm really worried.
We're glad you're speaking, because we were worried you were just to be the other side of her crutch here.
Yeah, I just catch her, yeah. I'm really worried about the fact that the last time I was here, I was told that he was using that outside lift to keep his plow truck on. And now when that lift goes, I don't know what he's gonna do with his plow truck. That concerns me, you know? I'm worried about where he's gonna put that thing. Because if he had to keep it up on a lift all the time, and now the lift's gone, I don't know. I'm nervous for him. And this whole landscaping thing, the trees and bushes and shrubs you guys want him to put in, the noise and smell, I don't know if it's gonna bother him, you know? The noise and smell from the, I don't know about this landscaping thing. It's just, why? Where's the last body shop or auto shop you went to that was all landscaped? That's all I got to say. It's crazy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here who'd like to speak? Gentleman in the rear, thank you. Come on down.
My name is Dave Raymond. I'm in a butter to the applicant's property. In response to Mr. Phillippi's comments. There are no auto repair places that need landscaping because they're not put in residential areas. So I think the zoning board made a very large mistake in approving variance for this particular use, in direct contradiction with their own regulations. And it's becoming increasingly likely that this will need an independent arbiter to decide whether, the needs of the abutters and the concerns of the abutters are greater than the concerns of the applicant and the use of this property. Based on the actions of the applicant so far, I would urge the board not to grant any relief for landscaping requirements. And, sending a voicemail to someone saying that he's going to remove the lift is not good enough for me. It needs to be put in writing, and there needs to be a deadline, because basically he has gone ahead and done whatever he wanted to without permits. And as Mr. Devanza pointed out, it's a very bad precedent to set to allow people to build without permits and then have it approved later on. You're just setting, I think the town is setting itself up like just a bad precedent. And so, like I said, I would urge the board not to grant any relief at all to this applicant. And I guess I had a couple of questions that I'd like to, if you could answer tonight. First,
The purpose of a public hearing is not to answer questions, it's for us to
Well, you can-
to get your input, but we'll
Well,
hear your
you can
questions,
discuss
but
it
we're
if
not
you-
being rude.
No, if you can answer it later on. I'm not saying right now, but the question I had is, can the planning board require, or the town require him to remove the lift? Or can you just ask him nicely? I mean, I don't know what the planning board's jurisdiction is. And second, can the zoning board either reverse itself or change the variance back to what it was? Because obviously, based on the comments that I've heard tonight from other abutters, this business should not have been allowed in this area in the first place, and it needs to go. It needs to go, and again, based also on what the applicant has done over the past year. It's obvious he's going to just continue to do what he wants to do without any input, without any concern from the abutters, and then, hope that no one brings up any concerns. And again, that's all I have to say for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to come forward and make a comment on this application here tonight? Yes, sir, come on down and state your name for the record.
George Jones, and I am an immediate abutter, and I've spoken here twice before. There hasn't been a lot of changes in what I want to say tonight and what I've said before. However, there's a major contrast between the other speakers and myself and what they see and what I will have to be looking at in the future, because I look directly down on the back of the property. You folks drive up and down Mass Road, and you don't see what I see. So it's very important to me when we talk about pulling in shrubbery, that we're not talking, although it has been mentioned before, we're at a much higher elevation, and for some reason, that would cause extreme difficulties to put in some border row of trees of some type to block the view, or at least minimalize we're going to be facing in the future. I don't think that's acceptable. I think something can be done and something should be done. Quite frankly, I was hoping someone on his behalf between the meetings would have at least come to us and approached us, because the same issue I brought up several meetings ago and at the last meeting, so I think this has been ongoing for maybe 6 weeks or more. So that's one issue I have that I really think that's important to address. Before long, there'll be nothing left of leaves on the few trees that are between us, and this winter, it's going to look very, very poor. One of the specifications, I think, that the ZBA laid down was that no abutting, I may be saying this wrong, but my understanding was abutting properties would not face any devaluation because of anything that was being authorized. And I think, if we have noise, if we have other types of pollution, and certainly if we have a visual pollution as well, then no one in this room can question the fact that your residence and your property has been devaluated. So I would certainly ask him and the gentleman who works with him on this project to consider that very, very strongly. Another issue we have, it's already been put into play, which is very, very unfortunate, but we, the abutters, now actually become a police force because at this point in time, I've seen no clarity whatsoever given here by anyone. I've seen a lot of back and forth. I've seen questions, I thought totally appropriate questions put forth. And I sit back there and I say, I don't understand what the response is to these questions. And then it seems as though we tend to segue into some other part of this overall plan. So I would like to see if the planning board would come up with something very, very specific that they are in agreement for, something that's clear that all abutters, all the residents can look at and live with. And I think if that isn't absolutely clear, then we have a continuation of these issues that all of us have to address. And that in itself is just totally wrong. So I'm sure when I sit back down, I'll think of 20 other things I wish I had said. I think that happens to everybody, but we have to look at intent, we have to look at, we have to look within ourselves and say, are we facing reality with what we thought? We're going to have one bay in a barn and the doors are closed. And that's how I understand that ZBA originally set this up. I mean, if those doors are left open, the noise, you can't prevent that. He can't prevent it. Only by shutting the doors, and hopefully there's some soundboarding in there or something. But it's a lot to ask, but once again, I'll repeat myself. The neighbors have to live with whatever you people present. So you walk away after you make your presentation, but we don't. We have to live there and we have to deal with it. So I wish you'd weigh everything that's being said this evening and come up with a plan that's suitable for every one of us. I guess basically that's it until I go back to my thinking board again. And I have, by the way, I want to thank, there's two people, I won't point them out, but did go up to a driveway and look, and of course that's open for everyone, because I did point out way back when, there's a different pictorial view from my home than what you see when you go up Mass Grove. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. Part of what I'm trying to accomplish is, let's look at that fairly from my side as well, having been there 32 years, I'd like to keep that as clean, as neat looking as possible. So that's it. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who'd like to make a comment at this time? I'm not seeing any other hands or people wanting to come forward, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. Board members, did you hear anything that you'd like the applicant to address? I'm seeing a nod, yes. Ray, why don't you come back down here? I don't know about the applicant's ability, given that Mr. Heichel isn't here tonight, but we'll see. Tim?
Thank you, Barbara. At least one of the public speakers stated what I stated, that think we need to stick to the strict variance grant that was allowed, then and whatever's allowed in that variance, and if you read it carefully, it states that allow an auto repair facility within the barn on the subject property, which means nothing outside. That's number one. Number two, another person represented about vehicles, and I think that this board could certainly limit the number of vehicles related to the repair business that can be on that lot at any given time. I also heard from another resident who stated about outside review of things. I think that we should clearly state that no outside storage of any tires, car parts, towing vehicles, or any other items related to the business. Whatever goes on in that business needs to stay inside the barn, and that would also help Mr. Jones with his view of the property, not seeing a bunch of junk piled up in the backyard. And also business days and hours, which we've never discussed at any time.
Yeah, it's on the
I
plan, it's
think
on the
that
plan.
was what
It is on the
It was
plan, well then I
discussed
take that
inside.
back, I apologize.
It was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or something like that. Very reasonable.
Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, I believe.
8 to 5, yeah.
I would like to also speak to the applicants who talked about the landscaping regulations. The landscaping regulations are very specific. Some of us on the board have discussed the possibility that we might be even looking at our landscape regulations, because when you have an applicant that has a 20-acre lot that's developing for a small site, that applicant has an undue burden to meet the regulations, and we have to discuss that as a board. But to go with the strict conformance of the landscaping regulations, I did a calculation on that last time, and I don't think you could plant as many trees and shrubs as the total lot would have required. You probably wouldn't even be able to see the building at that point. And we're not looking to, personally, I am not looking to have anyone's business sealed off from the public. I just think that the buildings need to look presentable, and the property needs to look more residential than more commercial. So I do want to state that strict conformance to the landscaping regulations is why they asked for the waiver.
Tim, I would just say in response to one comment that you made, that actually my read of the ZBA minutes was the intent was to seal this business off from the public.
Why
That
didn't,
was
I don't have any more than a notice to decision.
I thought that there were minutes
packet.
included in the packet that you got here tonight, but there was a specific
I apologize, I didn't read them.
discussion about there being one bay facing against the street, no sign. It's pretty clear if you read the ZBA minutes that the intent was to seal this off from the neighbors, and that it was intended only for overflow, so. And I think the applicant has previously said there wasn't gonna be a sign, so.
I think we go back to the statement that whatever the ZBA minutes reflect and whatever the notice decision reflects, that's what the applicant has to put forth.
And Michael, did you have your hand up? Thank you, Tim.
Yes, thank you. Looking at the ZBA minutes, there's representations made that there would be no front-facing bay door. You wouldn't see any of the parking from the road, and it would never be used as a primary business and won't be a junkyard. So, if there is any approval, I think removing that front bay door seems to be something that the applicant was comfortable with doing, and also perhaps making it the use of this as an overflow be contingent on the primary business still being in operation. That's all.
David?
Yes, on our drawing, justified required spaces, 12.1 for 12. I would like this board to hold firm to 12. When the applicant was here, I asked for justification for 4 extra spaces other than what was required. I did not get a satisfactory answer. And so if this board approves 12 spaces, I would like to see the plan revised that would cover less parking spaces. Once something's paved, it becomes parking space. And I endorse the previous comment that in some fashion, the approval of a car repair facility be contingent upon the existing, if it's, the applicant said, this is overflow. So it's contingent upon that primary business being there and operating. If that primary business closes, what happens to this one bay? Does someone buy this property and can we then operate a one-bay garage shop?
I don't know if any approval for use can have a sunset clause like that.
Well, I'm new on the board, so I'm just asking
Me
the
too.
question.
Phil?
Pointed out by Tim about the minutes of the ZBA being part of, important, and you go through it, one of the things that's in there, there was a Karen Forbes, attorney with Shaheen and Gordon, represented and presented with the applicant. And in it, she said the barn would be used as an overflow from his business. So I think that this is to be used as an overflow, period. If something happens with the business, that's irrelevant with the use here. This is, use is to be overflow at the capacity and the volume that's presented and what was granted by the ZBA. It also says, the question came up by Karen Forbes, who was the applicant's attorney, made a statement that an abutter had concerns about selling of automobiles, which John Heichel does not do and will not do. So there was a representation that there would be no sales of automobiles from this property on here. And if you just go through here, it says the applicant, and this is by his attorney at that meeting, the applicant has modified his plans to be only one bay instead of two. So it was presented to the ZBA that the plan that was presented as two bays was modified to be one bay. This was represented by the attorney. The door, and that was pointed out by Michael, the door would be on the rear-facing undeveloped area. The number of parking spots is an issue for the planning board, they stated, so that's our issue to deal with. The applicant does not believe he needs as many as are required because he would only have one employee. It is not a high-traffic business and will never be used as a primary business. This is a minor addition to the building and to the use of the property, it's stated. You go through these minutes and you find exactly, it talks about parking was 12 based on 2 bays. So now it's including additional ones at a real estate office. He only needs 4 per bay. Brian Rose asked the applicant, would he work on 2 cars at one time? John Heichel said no. It's not clear in the minutes about the drive-through. It just says he originally thought he would have space to drive through. So if originally you had thought that you'd have space to drive through and you have a modified plan, I interpret that statement meaning that you no longer have drive-through. That's my interpretation of it. Alan Eaton said issues such as lighting and noise were to be dealt with the planning board. But I think these are consistent. Again, there's a statement by the chairperson. The applicant is proposing to use an existing barn for overflow work. Parking will not be visible from the work. I think this is all consistent with what was presented at the public hearing by the abutters.
I'm not sure what that last statement means. What's consistent?
Well,
Go ahead, Phil.
I know, I took notes of what many of the comments were during the public hearing.
You're saying the comments from the abutters.
Right, that were here. There was one,
Okay, when you said this, I didn't know what that meant.
no, that's, I found the consistency.
Other questions or comments? Jim, I couldn't tell whether that move was a hand or not, so.
Well, I'm not sure. we said this last time, we're a little unclear on what the ZBA approved. And for example, is it a drive-through? Is it the things Phil just stated? Now, you can approve this, and then it's up to the building inspector to decide if what's being done there is consistent with ZBA, and leave it up to that person. But I'm struggling to say that what's presented to us with the assurance of the multiple doors, for example, is what the ZBA was approving. It seemed to, though it's not clear, that it was represented would not be a drive-through. Now we see a drive-through. So I'm not sure how to get beyond our questions about what the ZBA approved.
I think it is an issue. And I rely on the expertise of my board where to go. I would say, in my own view, at a minimum, I do not believe that tonight I could approve these plans based on the ZBA approval. There is too much to be changed, to include removal of the concrete pad, to include a new parking layout. We've now had more than one board member talk about the number of parking spaces, which I want depicted on this because of the abutter concerns. I think there needs to be a note in regards to the bay door, as to what and where that is. I think that there have been issues raised in regards to what is on the property. While ZBA representations were made that nothing would be seen from the street consistently, we already know you can see the back of that lot from the street. And from a planning board perspective, we do need to be concerned about abutters. Screening is one of the purposes of our planning regulations. So, it seems to me there's a lot going on with this plan that if we were to approve and go forward with, would require a whole number of notes or changes to the plan, even if we could reach some consistency on it. I also was concerned right from the beginning with the amount of paving on this plan, because I understand the issues in regards to property maintenance, but it's been maintained so far, and what's paved becomes parking. And I have repeatedly said I don't think we should put enforcement in, set up situations where abutters have to be the enforcers. So, where other members of the board feel on my concerns, because this either needs to get voted up, it needs to get voted down, or it needs to be continued. Tim?
So we need to go back to the minutes of the Zoning Board of Adjustment and some statements that were made in that minutes for Mr. Shea to talk with the applicant about and come back with some concrete items here. The applicant's attorney stated in the record the door would be on the rear facing the undeveloped area instead of facing the road. That tells me that at that point they were agreeing there would be no door on the front of the building and there would be one door on the back of the building. That's what I think we need to see. And insulate the side to provide more of a buffer. That goes to Mr. Jones's comment about noise. If they're going to insulate the inside of the building, they're going to reduce the amount of noise that would come out of the building. We go down to parking. Mr. Heichel said it was based on 2 bays at 12 spaces. He only needs 4 per bay. Then he says 8 is fine. Well, if he said only if he needs 4 per bay and a mechanic, then we should be looking at 5 or 6 spaces for this project, and he needs to come back with 5 or 6 spaces.
Before, I mean, Tim, I just,
Well, I mean, I'm just giving the mechanic a place to
okay,
park.
all right.
I mean, that would be the 5th parking space.
Well, don't you think that the regulations for 4 spaces for a commercial operation includes what people are working there?
We would have to give a variance, or a waiver for that, because we would require more, I think, right?
Customers and workers for.
That's, I think, parking is customers and workers. When you approve a Shaw's Plaza, it's,
And that, if we're going to limit the amount of parking, then we would also remove a lot of the pavement, which, as was stated, provides space for other people to go park on. So I think some of these comments that are clearly stated in the zoning board of adjustment need to be what are represented on the plan for us to see, a plan that has the pad and the lift removed, and if the landscaping would like, the applicant would like the landscaping to stay as planned, then he would be up to him to make that request. It's not up to me to tell him what to do with the landscaping.
Can I speak?
anybody else want to make a comment? I don't see anybody, Ray?
The landscaping, we'd like to stay as submitted, so we'd like that waiver. We feel we've addressed the spirit of the ordinance.
Do we have a waiver request, Jonathan?
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
I would just miss this packet.
Well, the waiver request originally didn't specify what we wanted, we just wanted less. So over the course of the meetings, we put onto the plan what we've.
I think the waiver request was for nothing, as I remember.
It was requested for.
For no landscaping at all.
No, it was for less than required.
Can I get back to my question? Do I have a physical waiver request for landscaping?
Yeah, that was on the original
Yeah, in the
application.
It was? Okay, I'm not.
You probably
I
didn't
don't-
make it in this one.
All right.
John changed it on our plan here. It says, none at this time. Previously requested landscaping waiver, submitted updated plan set. That's on page 4 at the top. So I don't think none at this time is accurate. I think
I will change that.
landscaping waiver should have been listed as a waiver.
Jim?
I move to continue this. I think, I don't know, well, Ray had more comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm getting a sense, we need to reduce the parking, we need to reduce the pavement, we need to show a note removing the lift. We already have notes about hours of operation, about one vehicle being worked on at a time. Concrete pad, you can park on a concrete pad. To jackhammer it away just seems like a waste of energy.
Well, maybe that should have been considered before.
I know, I'm just trying to, you know.
I understand you're
Instead
here
of-
on behalf of the applicant,
Yeah.
but again,
Okay.
I'm, just the abutters' comments have
Okay.
been pretty consistent on that from my perspective.
Well, he could concrete the whole parking lot instead of paving. That's kind of,
You gotta be a little further south for the frost line.
I know.
He could screen it and make it as a dumpster pad out of
No,
it.
I thought of that when we were eliminating the
There you
rear
go.
overhead door.
Screen it and put your dumpster on the pad then, and you'll
But,
cover that one.
if we decide to do that, maybe we'll present that on the plan, but.
That's a different thing, then. It comes in as a different thing on the plan.
Right. All right, I guess, getting a sense of how we can adjust the plans to answer.
And there needs to be a note, I think, about outside storage of,
Yeah, sure, I know,
on
I
the
put that
plan.
on my list, yeah,
okay. I mean, I knew you had written it down, so
Yeah.
I think it probably ought to just go on as a
Yeah.
note.
sure.
The number of doors being
Yeah,
addressed?
I still, the two doors in the rear, the one, if the zoning board says it's not supposed to have a door in the front, then I guess that's something we'll have to look at. But I still say an overhead door, two overhead doors in the back isn't an issue, because
I mean,
it's
part of
just easily accessible to
I
get
know,
things
but
in
part of
and
the
out.
problem, Ray, is that all of this work went on.
Yeah, I know.
Before anybody saw a plan, and I remember that whole building was jacked up.
But, okay.
It was all jacked up, so and it was a significant move up, and it took a while, and at this point, I can't even remember the door that was on the front. I think there was a door there, not what's there now, but,
Most barns like this would have a door in the front.
yeah.
so,
But,
right.
so I don't know, when they went to ZBA, he didn't even own the property, which
Right.
raises another issue, but we're not gonna go there. So, because what I'm thinking is, it was one of the old style
Sliding doors.
sliding type barn real door, so that when they talked about a door on the back, that's because that's what was really gonna be the access to the garage.
Well, I certainly have a sense of what I can do to the plan, that the next meeting, I think we can put this to bed, one way or another.
Tim?
Ray, just read, if you read this notice of decision on page 5, the applicant's attorney stated the door would be on the rear of the building.
Okay.
That's a statement, it's in the record by his attorney.
Okay.
So I think you need to go and make sure he reads what was written and makes a decision on what you're gonna come back with.
Okay.
The door, not a door.
Semantics?
The door, that's a singular word.
All right, has been a motion to continue made. Are we gonna continue this to a date certain?
That's up to Ray.
Sure.
I'd rather put it out a while so people can, these are significant changes, and people should have a chance to see them. I'm concerned.
We're
if
bordering on the part of whether or not this plan is even gonna end up being the same plan that was noticed, so.
Yeah, I think just minor changes of parking lot.
In light of what the butters.
There's nothing else physically in the plan that's gonna change. We're talking about doors and things. It's got nothing to do with the plan. And a
Well,
couple of
I'm
those.
gonna recommend we continue this for 1 month. That'll give the abutters a chance to come and see the revised plans. Because I think it's only fair.
That's fine.
13
That'll
October.
be
October 13th. And in regards to, all right, so you understand, you've heard all the comments on the ZBA. Phil, if you've got something specific that you think you need to,
Well, I understand your position on the landscaping, but you have one significant abutter that has a significant concern. And
Right, and his comments are correct. His property is so high above, and he's looking through substantial vegetation, and there's no vegetation on his side of the property because his entire driveway's been built right on the property line, so.
well, if I can clarify, there is, once again, the planning board leaves those disputes to abutters to work
Yeah,
out, and my
sure.
understanding is
Yeah.
that a number of trees were taken down that
Quite a few
Mr. Jones
pines.
thought were his, and, abutters don't have the capacity to get into an argument with
No,
the
just-
tree
I was
company
just-
when they show up with the crane.
We're just talking about buffers and trying to screen the property, that's all.
Tim?
Thank you. So if we're able to restrict the rear of the property to a restricted number of spaces for vehicles that are there for service, if we also restrict that there is to be no outside storage of any type of automotive parts or supplies, tires, then Mr. Jones' view will be of the back of a building with a few cars parked there, and the lift will be gone. And I don't know if that would be satisfactory for Mr. Jones. I'm not asking him, I'm just stating it on the record, that if we can make sure that the back of the building stays clean by condition, and the applicant adheres to the conditions, then possibly Mr. Jones's fears could be waylaid to some degree, without planting 75-foot tall trees.
He has seemed reasonable in the.
He's even offered to
public
pay for
hearings.
some trees, and I think maybe
He has
that
seemed
could be
reasonable.
something.
Somebody went to talk to him.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And maybe a condition that there not be any unregistered vehicles stored on the property?
Well, but, yeah, we can make that a condition of approval. We can make all kinds of conditions.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to throw out as much as possible, so if Ray comes in with
Well, if we're going to
plans
limit it
that
to,
were close as possible.
if we're going to limit it to 5 spaces, it sounds like he could have 4 customers' vehicles and a mechanic there, and that would be about the limit
I
of
mean-
of the allowed vehicles.
Tim, I think it's 4 spaces. I don't know why you get to 5, so anyways.
Well,
Ray and
12.1
his
is,
client can
12.1
work
is
it out.
13, right?
All right, do I?
No.
Huh?
If we have-
Motion to, I second Jim's motion.
It's been seconded now. We have a motion to continue this to October 13th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray.
The next item on our agenda is an item of new business. I'm sure they're thinking, finally, map 15, lot 166-1, This has to do with a conditional use permit hearing and a completeness review for an application to allow 2 separate driveways to be constructed on a lot that will not meet the 40-foot driveway separation requirement as per section 7.4.2 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. And it's an existing lot that will have a 2-family home built on the property. A conditional use permit must be granted in order to allow the construction of the 2 driveways that do not meet the 40-foot separation requirement. Daniel Lapointe is the applicant and owner. It's located on L'Oreal Street, and it is zoned R2. Board members, in our packet, I believe it is on page 8. Gotta make sure I'm looking at the right one here. Jonathan, you want to take us through this, please?
Yes, the applicant came, and he's been speaking with the DPW, working with Eric Gustafson, and trying to find a way to make the driveway work appropriately, but you couldn't make it feasible necessarily for the property to have the 2 separate driveways and meet that distance appropriately. It's hindered in part as if you're looking at the property from the road. To the left, there's some significant topography to deal with, and so that kind of limits the area that they have. And in working with the applicant, they do have the approved building permit, and they've been working with us and the DPW to try to resolve this issue. And they decided that they would, instead of using a common driveway, they would prefer, as it would be more desirable to the tenants and the owners, to have 2 separate driveways as opposed to 1 common.
Thank you. Jonathan, can you just answer a question for me before we begin consideration of this? The overview talks about a 2-family home that will be built on the property, but the plan talks about an existing building. So it has already been built, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It has been built, and they are waiting for the driveway before they can get the CO and things like that.
Okay, so it was built with the garages.
Yes, and that was the way it was
entire layout
intended
without the
originally.
driveway.
Correct.
Okay, Tim,
So, John, how did they get a permit to build something
without a driveway.
without the driveway permits being approved?
Originally, it was going to be, the ownership has changed, and the original owner talked about doing a common driveway, a shared driveway, and that would have worked with a DPW in it, and it still would work, but it's the applicant's desire to request 2 separate driveways to make it a little bit more palatable for potential tenants and future owners.
Jonathan, can you clarify for me that this building design was done with the intent for 1 driveway?
The original building permit, that was, it was supposed to be a shared driveway, maybe with, one common entrance, and then it would fan out from there to the separate driveways.
It wouldn't be possible with the amount of distance. That's why I'm asking. They don't have enough distance in front of the building to meet the requirements for the 1 driveway now. So how on earth would it have been a shared driveway fanning out? Is this the same building that there was a permit given for?
As far as I know, it is.
Why wouldn't the common driveway?
Yeah,
work?
why, I was curious about that as well.
Like, maybe I'm misreading the dimensions on the driveway, but if you're going to have,
It would, from the
T-shape.
property line to the, touching the garage door, there's not enough room for a fan.
for a fan, that's my point.
I see what you're saying.
Which is
See if
why
I can
I'm
pull up
looking
the
at it,
original.
wondering how it was, going to Tim's question as to how this was built.
Might the structure have been further back into the right-to-build area.
I don't see any measurements from the edge of the building to the edge of the property, whatever that distance is.
Other than,
Would it be improper to ask the applicant to comment?
No, I just wanted to know if you have it. When we hear from them, they can
Okay.
explain it. I'm sure that they have an answer for that. So I just had that question when I saw the to-be-built versus existing, because I didn't understand how any of this happened. All right.
Madam Chair, I move that we find the application is complete, accept it, and find there's no regional impact.
Is there a second?
Second. Go ahead, Phil.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Carries. This conditional use permit is accepted as complete and does not have a regional impact. Jonathan, you don't have anything else to add to the application, do you?
No, I do not.
All right, applicant, come on down, let's hear from you, please. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dan LaPointe, Mrs. Chris LaPointe.
Hi.
Originally, it was brought to our attention that we could only put one driveway because of lack of frontage. It needs 250 feet for 2 driveways, and we have 254, but when we applied for our permit, I guess there was a mistake in reading which statute we were actually on. So when we drew that, basically what happened is it looked okay on paper with the gentleman I was working with. You know, we went over there and the building was not constructed at the time. And in an effort to even create more room, we went back to like almost another 3 feet without crunching the backyard too much, because it's a pretty unique property that the place is on. As the building got up and, you know, we were doing the work to create the driveway, and with our site guy, you know, we used paint and drew what we had on our original plan, and just come to the conclusion that we could not, it wouldn't work. Basically, the people would just drive over the lawn if it's sold to, or even any tenant. Imagine over time, because it's too tight. As soon as you start to turn, you start to hit the lawn that's on the side. So we immediately, Chris and I went down to, you know, talk to the highway guy again, and drew up several plans again, we had to go draw it. And it's also unique in one area because there is a road drain there too. So that actually adds a little bit of relief, but he was trying to stay to, you know, what his job was as far as defining the curb cut and everything else, which leaves even a smaller patch of lawn that would just get run over. When my other son went back to the department, they realized that we did qualify for 2 driveways. The wrong RSA was stated to us at the beginning, before it was actually built, which was a blessing. But the hardest part of that now was keeping it where it was cosmetically appealing to our neighbors and functional. The 40-foot wasn't met. We're 16 feet short or so of that. And then here we are now, where my thought really was to, I'd like the green space in the middle because it separates the 2 units, a little shrubbery or things of that nature. And I certainly don't want them to start driving over the lawn, we'll say a month later, right? After nobody's watching it, so to speak, you know, because then it, you know, your curb appeal is going right off the bat. So after a lot of discussion, you know, they got a good road agent. He came over and visited us, and we talked and tried this and tried that, and this was our next best thing, where we could keep the curb appeal, make something simple and functional. It separates the 2 units. Obviously, nobody is against it, and I know the neighbor across the street was delighted about it, because he wants to see lawns and green. And
Right.
and this particular site was, you know, basically just a little dumping ground for quite some time. Is leaves, sticks, bricks, and all this other stuff, you know. So it's a really nice improvement. It's a beautiful home. I encourage you to go by, you know. We made some nice lawns, and that's really, I'm going to say, you know, some of that's probably my fault too, for not paying attention to the 40-foot in our design of the property. But every foot in length, it's just so much money because of the hill, because of the drainage that's needed for the big pipe that comes in off of Mass Road and stuff, you know. So, but I guess that's where we are now. We're just asking for a little bit of help, I guess, you know.
So just for clarification, the original building permit was granted for that design?
No, it was granted for a more design like this, but it didn't fit.
Yeah, that was the, this
Look-
is the one we drew up with
I
Eric.
meant for the building, for the building.
Yes.
This is the one that Eric approved, the driveway permit, which allowed us to get the building permit. And we drew this with him as
Can
our
you pass
driveway
that down? I
design.
can't see. I
Because
can barely see when it's.
At
right
which
in front
point
of
we
me.
thought we were still only allowed one curb cut, not knowing that we were potentially doing 2 curb cuts with the 40 feet separation. He was pretty cut and dry that we didn't have the frontage and we weren't allowed to do it. So this is kind of the sketch we came up with.
And we couldn't tape it because the property was a cliff, like, you know, it was,
I know
it
the
had
property.
like 8 feet of,
Okay, so this really, okay, so the answer to my question sounds like it is, yes, it's the same idea. It was 2 garages on the opposite ends of the
Oh,
building.
yeah.
Yep.
And that was what you were getting the building permit for, and that's what you built intending to be built. All right, you didn't have 2 garages in the center that you thought, and then decided you wanted to
Changed.
move them for aesthetics to the outside. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Tim?
So are these going to be sold, or are they going to be rented?
I don't think,
I'm asking a question.
actually,
Well, it goes to driveway maintenance down the road. Separate driveways or common driveways is my point I'm trying to get to. So,
it's.
if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
No, I'm actually undecided, because it's a really nice property, and we own the lot next door, so we're, contemplating.
I asked because if it does get sold as 2 separate units, 2 separate driveways don't end up with an argument over who's going to pay for repaving or snow
I'm much more
plowing
in
and such.
favor of separate.
Yeah, and shoveling, yeah.
So I think this is a much better plan
I think that's
than
something
what
that
the DPW initially approved based on they thought you had a lack of frontage.
Correct, yeah.
And this property is adjacent to the big swale that the Public Works drain goes into, and this is where those condos were approved over here next to it?
Yes.
I think I remember this project
Yep.
from way back.
Yeah, and that was another, excuse me if I could add, that was another part of the discussion is, I mean, come wintertime, where would the cut line be of who's gonna step out the door first to clear the end of the driveway, because we all know how much.
I think this is a much better plan than that.
Just so you know where I'm going, I'm going to, when we stop talking, make a motion that the proposed application, that we find that the reduction in the dimensions proposed is the most minimal reduction that will still allow access to be established to the lot while minimizing to the greatest extent possible potential conflicts of turning movements into and out of the driveway with other turning and through traffic on the adjacent street. And that we find that the use is permitted as conditional use. The development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements. I'm looking at page 105. It's 15.4141 through 15.4.1.4.6, which are the conditions for granting a conditional use.
I second Jim's motion.
I didn't want to make the motion until we stopped talking. And
I thought that was a motion from the minute you started, so
I
I
agree.
accept the second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It passes unanimously. Go forth and pave, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thanks for having a lot of patience with everybody out here, too. You too. That job is hard.
Does that mean we won't be seeing you as a member of the public at a future meeting?
That means you can run for a planning board seat in the future.
Yeah, run.
You never know, right?
There you go.
Thank you,
Well, we'll
folks.
leave you. Thank
welcome.
you.
the pay is very good.
That is awesome. Do you have any other business?
Do we have any other business, Jonathan? I am not seeing any. Now, let me ask you, we have continued one application to October 13th. Does that mean unless something comes in Tomorrow, we have nothing for September 22nd.
As far as I know,
What is that deadline, Barbara?
for the 26th, it's the 2nd of September, I think.
How many days prior to the meeting?
I don't know,
20?
but
Do we,
it's,
do we need to have a workshop on zoning amendments?
we do.
I hate to say that, but, you know, we have September, October, November, then we get the holiday season.
And quite honestly, I am reluctant to start the way we did last time with sort of sending things in and comments, and maybe we should just start on September 22nd. if people don't mind.
I hate to say it, but
Madam Chair.
You hate to say,
you
you don't
asked
really hate to
for
say.
me to explain 10 August
Oh,
public
yep.
information meeting, and I'm prepared to do that.
All right, hold on a minute, so we're not finished with this, David. So I think that September 22nd, regardless of whether we get an application in, should be noticed as a meeting, and we can notice it as a workshop.
Okay.
And the intent would be people that we would get out of here not later than 8:30, but so that you come with some of the things that we've discussed in the past, or anything that's come up here this year that you might want to address. I still have some of the stuff from last year, and I'll meet with Jonathan to go through them before we meet on the 22nd, which means, Jonathan, once again, I need to make that appointment before I leave tonight.
Sure.
Because it never happens otherwise. All right, you also, thank you, David, to have in front of you a public informational meeting, information that, for a meeting that David attended. This has to do with the Amoskeag Bridge intersection. There has been much discussion over the years about trying to improve that intersection because of the traffic issues that arise during commuter time.
Didn't get one.
don't want to steal mine.
There was one per large drawing that was distributed.
That's right.
Here you go.
Okay.
And I have two extras here.
I think everybody's all
I
set
think
now,
we're set.
David.
I'll take that one
Okay.
back.
Gail, please.
Thank you.
Attending for the town, yes, myself, Mark Lemay, Jonathan, police,
Carrie
Terry,
Seklich, and Adam Jacobs from
and
DPW.
Madam. In about 2 minutes, the first page here is the final drawings that are being considered for the Amoskeag Circle interchange of the future. And the top drawing is what the traffic engineers call a diamond interchange, and essentially from here in Gulf Sound, if you were driving from the top of the pictures and approaching the Amoskeag intersection, you would, for the first time, be able to turn to the left and enter Front Street without going all the way around the whole circle. And you would travel over 293 to a stoplight, and then by bearing right, you then approach your decisions to go north or south on 293. The other design for exit 6 is being considered as what something is called the single-point urban interchange. In this case, you would travel over Front Street and also becomes 80 Street. And the stoplight is right on top of 293. And you would, people going north on 293 or going to the south on 293 are essentially accessing 293 at that point, and vehicles exiting 293 would cross over right in the center of the bridge.
David?
Yeah.
If I may, this looks like the intersection designed for Manchester Street in Concord, where Manchester Street meets 93, where they have the X intersection under the middle of the end of the...
Correct.
And it looks like it's the same
Correct.
design as
Yes.
that interchange.
You're right.
Just so you can visualize how it would be.
And instead of, this interchange would be over 290.
Isn't that similar to the Granite Street? when
And
you
Granite
come-
Street.
Yeah.
You cross in Granite. Okay, more pertinent for this board really is exit 7 on the next page. The Exit 7 would move from its present location, which is just south of the landfill that's represented in the image, to north of the landfill. And it would, if you were going to the south, there would be driveways going into Manchester Community College, and that new road would also access it's called Front Street. Going north on the new road, it would feed right into, help me, Phil.
Dunbarton?
Dunbarton, yes,
Oh, Dunbarton Road.
yes.
What's it tie into, Dave? Does it tie into what?
It feeds directly into Dunbarton, but it has a left-hand turn showing going into also a realignment of Dunbarton.
Was there ever the consideration from way back when to bring that over to the Straw Road, Goffstown Back Road intersection?
That's what you see on the lower drawing,
Nice.
but what they call potentially northerly alignment. Now you see an intersection from the road that's from the 293, a road going north to Dunbarton Road, but now you see a spur going all the way over to the intersection of Gulfstown Road and Straw Road. What I was very pleased with out of the comments that were being presented to the audience there is that the need for all of this alignment. Yes, they want to address the poor connectivity of the region into these two intersections, and that the design would facilitate access to Manchester's Hackett Hill master plan, which is a very large development, as well in Gulfstown industrial zoned land. So that's right part of their need that they have to address.
Right. I have a question for you, Dave.
Yes.
Can you use your political skills to get Manchester to remove their no-through trucking signs as part of this?
If DOT were to build a major interchange feeding in the Gulfstown Road, I would think that's a given.
Well, I don't know anything's a given. I just know that Manchester had the authority to erect those signs, and they did it. And I just hope they would come down as part of this.
That's going to be quite a few years in the future. What I am very encouraged for is comments near the end of this whole presentation. DOT would prefer to build Exit 7 first, like in 8 years. The reason for that is that it would be a relief valve, because Ameskeet Circle would be a construction mess for 2 years. And with this intersection built, they predict that 32% of all the traffic that's coming in Gulfstown Back Road, coming in Gulfstown Road, 32% of that traffic would divert on that potentially northern alignment, the access 7, to go either south or north. And that would be a significant relief of the all the detours and traffic situation when Ameskeet Circle's being rebuilt. So that to me as an engineer says DOT was really going to lean in that direction. And so and they loosely threw out, it was 2024, so 8 years for 7. And then in another 2 years, 2026, which is the end of the 10-year plan.
Jim is going to be retired by then
Yes.
anyway.
Is he going to live that long?
So the money for this is in the state's 10-year plan.
When I attended the preliminary hearings on this, Manchester, and the residents of Manchester were very supportive of it. Are they still? Or do they?
Sure. The intersection of Straw and Gulfstown Back Road and this new road that to be built, the woman whose house is going to be removed.
I didn't like it much.
No, she understood.
Very
She was,
excited.
In 8 years, she's going to move.
And get $475,000 for a
Because
$200,000
in the
house.
past, when these discussions were held, when they had discussions on this,
My house
there was
goes
no
through it.
support, or very, very little support from Manchester. There was more negative from Manchester. Now, when I went to the preliminaries, there was quite a bit of support.
Manchester's on the Technical Advisory Committee, and these are the two drawings that are...
You answered my question?
It has been whittled down from many different drawings to these two.
Think of the neighborhood traffic that would
By
come out of that
April of
Mount
next,
Calvary.
and in conclusion, by April of next year, there will be a decision.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Dave.
much,
Thank
David,
you,
for going to
David.
that meeting. That's been kicking around for a while.
Yeah.
It's nice to
Motion to
see it's
adjourn?
really coming.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. We are adjourned. Well, Jim,
I was shutting up on this.
Bill seconded it.